Welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
Shooting a breeze, laughing with one another. It's another good week coming up with my main man, JP. JP 4-3. Can you still shoot it? It's been a couple months. Can you still knock it down?
Yeah, I hit my first three last night playing pickup, so that's good.
I mean,
had a first good game. It didn't last as long, but I got to a great start.
All right. Well, I'm getting off to a good start. I get my man Jacob Padilla joining us in for another week of Nebraska Preps postgame. You can smell it in the air.
Football.
Fresh cut grass, watered lawns, AstroTurf is glistening. We're ready to go, man. Tomorrow, we get it going.
Yep. Recording this on the day before the season starts with week 0 games. But yeah,
are you a big fan of week 0?
It's more football, I guess. I don't know, like in terms of from the team perspective, like how that factors, like how they see it in terms of, all right, you're starting earlier and you're getting a break later in the season. Like how would you want a week 0 game if you had the choice, or would you prefer the traditional?
So I've gone back and forth. Like if I have a younger team,
and yeah, we talked about that last
I probably would take the week 0, but being experienced, and some people may think that's backwards, right? If you're experienced, men play early.
Yeah.
But I'll take the extra week and the film.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the big thing. But here's the deal. As I figured out last week, Prep doesn't have to trade film if they don't want to, because we don't have anything to exchange with them. So our answer to that was, so here's the funny thing, Coach Lamanji leaves no stone unturned. He's like, well, boys, grab your notebook, pen, and paper. We're going back old school. Be at Bellevue West by 6. I was like, wow. And he delegated responsibilities, formation, play, like it's truly old school. I was like, can we just beg for film? No, not happening. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very, very interesting. We closed last week with talking about Class A and the preseason poll. So I think it would be very fitting, young Jacob, to start with Class B, based on the coaches poll. Now, I know you guys like to give Mike Sauter some flack over there at NEB Preps and Hurrdat Sports, but that's not his poll.
He's just the one that's posted.
That is the coaches poll. So let's be kind to the coaches poll. Any surprises? We had a few last week. I felt like Jacob with Millard North being ahead of Millard. So I wasn't really splitting hairs, but there were a couple where I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you haven't seen it. The Class A poll came out after we recorded, but West Side 1, WS 2, no surprises there. Omaha North 3, I feel like once you get to 3, you can start going a lot of different directions, but they're obviously a good team, got some pieces coming back. Millard South at 4, we talked about them. Millard North, they're at 5, and then Elkhorn South at 6, Lincoln Southeast at 7, Gretna at 8, Kearney at 9, and Grand Island at 10, with Prep, Millard West, Lincoln East, and Papillion La Vista all receiving votes.
So kind of some of the feedback I got is I think some people feel they probably would have put Millard South higher. And I think a lot of people like Millard West, at least kind of in my sphere. And I think Kearney was kind of the big omission in that top 6-7 range. But I think you're right. After, I probably would have made Elkhorn South 3, just because of what they bring back up front with Murphy and Prohaska and Ronner at quarterback. I give them the nod at 3, but you're probably right. After 3 or 4, it's what do you value?
Yep, and we'll get to start seeing that play out here this week with some of these teams in action. Obviously, Bellevue West, we talked about against Prep. This is kind of the Metro Class A game here, week 0.
Yeah, Papiola Vista South travels to North Platte, and I say that with all caution for Coach Clem and that bunch. It's not easy to load up the fellas, travel 4.5 hours, and play a team that plays the way that North Platte does. We learned that firsthand.
Yeah.
We took it on the chin going out there a year ago.
Yep. So
Now the Sands Tilford and a couple of guys that are now playing big
that-
time
I
college
was gonna say,
football.
that's a little different out there.
I mean, Tilford was a stud.
Yeah.
Gosh, he was good. I see him in my sleep a little bit. They had 2 young defensive and offensive linemen, though, that will be as good as advertised this year if you're a Bulldogs fan out there in North Platte.
In Class B, you have Elkhorn North going to Beatrice and Blair hosting Norris. A couple of top teams there. If we want to hop into the Class B preview here since we covered A last week.
Hashtag too soon to call this a 3-horse race, but it appears the cream at the top appears to be, in whatever order you like it, Bennington, Elkhorn North, and Omaha Scott.
And that is the top 3 in Sauter's coaches poll there. Bennington, I mean, the run that they've been on, they're the number one. You put them there until they prove they don't deserve it. Just with the amount of talent they've got coming in there.
Should be really good defensively. That back 7 is legit. They're going to be a handful.
Yeah, they bring so many guys back on defense. 5 of their top 7 tacklers return, led by linebacker Kyler Lauritsen. Just a junior, at 103 tackles last year, 14 for loss, 4 sacks, 3 picks. Just all-around great player. Gunnar Lim, committed to North Dakota. Great athlete back there at safety.
It's a good get for them.
Yeah, for sure.
I like him.
And he's definitely did the camp circuit, got a lot of attention, had a really good offseason and found a home. And, again, really, really good athlete back there. 92 tackles last year. Had 4 picks, 471 punt return yards, which is about 14 per return. 185 kickoff return yards. He had 3 return touchdowns. I think 1 punt, 1 kick, 1 interception return. So again, just some dynamic athletes in the back in the back line for Bennington there. Lane Bover, 71 tackles. Ben Gilliland, 65 tackles, 8 for loss, 6 sacks. So again, they're just loaded on defense, even losing a couple of key guys from last year. It starts there for them. And then on offense, it's just kind of gotten to the point where they lose some of the best players in the class and then just replace them. And it's just kind of plug and play there. You got Peyton Sandman coming back. He'll be the quarterback, it seems like. Only attempted 11 passes last year, 95 yards and a touchdown.
Playing behind Bird, that will happen.
5.5 yards per carry. Ran it 13 times, so not a lot of experience, but seems like he's settling in there. Quentin Archer is their top returning running back, obviously playing behind Nick Colbert last year. Again, another dynamic player that put up some monster numbers. 318 yards last year, 3 touchdowns, 6 yards a carry. Caught a 33-yard touchdown as well, so kind of plug him into that backfield. And then KJ Taffa, top returning wideout, I believe. 17 catches, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns last year. You got Ben Jurgensen had 17 catches last year as well, 177 yards. So they're losing again. That Bird, Isaac Connor, Colbert combination, best.
They were prolific.
Yeah, but you got guys that have played in their system, and again, you can bet they're going to be strong up front, as they have been for a while now in this whole run. So yeah, I think Bennington clearly very deserving of starting the season at number 1 after what they've done the last 2 years.
Yeah, so it's interesting too because Coach Leonard seems to have this thing rolling where it is the culture is where it is. He's young, aggressive, and the community is ever growing. I mean, he just gives you the appearance. He just doesn't mind the expectation. Pressure truly is a privilege for those guys.
Yep. And now speaking of pressure, Elkhorn North from a few years ago, just starting up to build kind of year over year. Obviously that first year was pretty rough for them, playing all young guys and playing varsity football for the first time, going up against some of the best in the class, but they've been building over the last few years and obviously lost a dynamic quarterback from last year. That was Mr. Do Everything for that team, but around him, they were building up some key pieces, building up the lines, building up defense, got some skilled position players.
And I think them up front is the strength of that football team. That is a big, strong, good-looking, physical team.
Yeah, Sam Thomas, kind of the headliner there, going to Northern Iowa, right?
Yeah.
So he's a guy that can play offense and defense, can control things up front. You've got obviously tight end Chase Lofton.
Good player.
Yep.
Fantastic summer.
Just a junior. Yeah, he really took off this year. Saw that Oklahoma offer. It was like, wait, what? Who is this? And it was just the beginning for him. So 39 catches, 577 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. So he's kind of the main target there. But then you've got Jet Tinglehoff coming back as a junior as well, who is kind of do everything athlete for them. Had 45 carries for 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had 24 catches for 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then 157 kick return yards as well. And then on defense, had 53 tackles, 3 picks, 3 passes defense, 4 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. So that junior class is looking pretty strong for them. You've got Tommy Mechna, senior at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Good athlete there as well. Sport kid, 201 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns last year. There's also 160 kick return yards. So on offense, the key for them will be replacing that quarterback. And it seems like Johnny Ferguson's going to be that guy who started, I believe, linebacker for them last year. Was a good player on that side of the ball, but now you're focusing more, all right, you're going to be our quarterback.
It's going to be interesting, too, because I think the way that they're built, and listen, at this age in high school level, you don't want to use the term game manager, but as long as they take care of the football, there's so many good surrounding pieces, and their interior up front, O-line, D-line, is very, very good. They should be able to hand the football off with a high degree of regularity and stop teams from rushing the football. It's going to give them a chance.
Yeah, and then Chris Thiessen, rather at linebacker there behind that defensive line, kind of making plays. 78 tackles last year. Did a little bit of everything. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see kind of the teams build up over the years, obviously, again, from where they started to where they are now, entering as the preseason number 2 team in Class B.
Familiar top 5 spot for this program. Accustomed to winning, hasn't been easy sledding here the last couple of years, but we look at the preseason rankings and a bit of an experienced bunch with the Omaha Skutt Skyhawks.
Yep. And now you've got Bennett Turman at quarterback coming back as a senior now. Plenty of experience under his belt now. I saw them play once last year against the Lincoln Pius X. That was kind of a back and forth game there. But you've got Colin Pike, would probably be the guy at running back. You got Max Chandler, fullback, linebacker. You've got a couple guys, Anthony Heidoff, kind of playing both ways, run back, linebacker for them. Obviously, they're going to be running that ball.
You hope, a lot of guys, right? I mean, Matt and Seth Term, how will they go about offensively attacking teams, and will they play to their strengths, whatever that is?
And they've got to be able to control the line of scrimmage a little better than they did last year to be able to run that offense. So yeah, that's.
I really like 3 of their top 5 up front too, along that offensive line to give them a chance. I think blending and meeting expectations, right? I think in very unscut-like fashion, they couldn't manage the line of scrimmages these last couple of years. It had gotten away from them. And the 2 teams that are preseason ranked ahead of them have made a living being good up front on both sides of the ball. So that it will be a chance to really bounce back for Skutt and answer some questions.
Yeah, and number 4 is number 4 is Waverly. They lost some key pieces, but they've got some really talented players coming back. Obviously, quarterback, they lost Trey Jackson last year, who added a different dynamic with his ability to sling the ball around to go with.
Kind of got them out of their traditional comfort zone of just handing the ball off.
And made a more versatile dynamic. But you've got Evan Cassins coming back at running back, who had almost 1,000 yards last year, 11 touchdowns, average over 90 yards a game. He's going to be the centerpiece of that offense. Got Aiden Smith as well as kind of the complimentary back there. Also a senior this year, had almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns last year on the ground. That's going to be a really tough 1-2 combination for them. Nolan Ma seems like he's going to be the quarterback. He only threw 5 passes last year, completed 1, carried the ball 11 times for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. So seems like they're getting probably back more to that super run heavy offense than what they had last year.
Traditional ground and pound back for Waverly, and in almost opposite fashion, when you start with the number 5 ranked team in Blair, it is in Sukup they trust, with Bodie coming back for what potentially could be a very strong senior campaign as Blair checks in at number 5.
Yeah, I had 1,600 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions last year. Earned a preferred walk-on offer from Nebraska over the offseason, getting some other interest as well. So, yeah, he's kind of the guy there at quarterback. And in the backfield, they've got a couple guys, starting with Brock Templer at almost 600 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns last year. Also a dual threat guy. He can catch out of the backfield. 17 catches, 151 yards, and a touchdown. Ethan Bessler is the other back there, 216 yards and a score. And also caught 17 passes for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you've got guys out of the backfield for Sukup to that can both hand off to and hit if he needs to find that option.
I really like his demeanor. He's a calm, cool customer. And if they stay healthy, they may not have the depth that the aforementioned have in the top.
A lot of these guys play both ways.
But if they can stay healthy, it will give them a chance to have some success.
Jay-Sean Unger is another guy that we need to mention there. Big 6'4", 6'5" athlete. Baseball player, right?
Can go get go get it.
Yeah, really great athlete out there for them for Sukup to throw to. 40 catches, 561 yards, and 6 touchdowns last year. Brady Brown as well, 370 yards, 5 catches last year. And then Templer, Brown, all those guys played defense as well last year. Bessler had 4 interceptions. Brown, Templer, those guys had average over almost 6 tackles a game. So they've got a lot of guys coming back on both sides of the ball, like you said. A lot of guys playing both ways. Maybe the depth isn't there, but the top end surely is.
And their offense is the one that isn't like the others. Now, Scott dabbles in some spread and will throw it some. But Blair, of the offenses that we've talked about so far, better make sure that back end is intact too, because they've got some weapons for Sukup to throw it to. They got to be able to protect him, make sure he stays healthy. But like you said, I ultimately think for them, it boils down to can they keep guys healthy.
Yeah, and they're at 6, team that lost almost everything except for one of the best players in the state, and that's Scottsbluff.
He comes back to run the football.
Yeah, obviously there was a super senior heavy team last year. Great dual threat quarterback there. You had seniors all over that defense. Obviously Brock Knutson, an offensive line running behind. But Sebastian Boyle is back, and the most prolific returning running back, I'd say. I haven't looked at some of the small schools who's necessarily coming back there, but in terms of the bigger classes, 11-man, Sebastian Boyle was just phenomenal last year. 237 carries for 1,926 yards and 26 touchdowns. That is a heck of a place to build around.
That's Calvin Strong territory, right? And one of the greatest high school players I've ever coached. Those are prolific numbers, Jacob.
And that's the thing. Like the last couple of years, there have been so many just prolific, big name running backs. Like the running back position last couple of years has been absolutely stacked with guys coming back.
L.J. Richardson, Ducker,
Colazo,
Ballard at Elkhorn South.
Yeah,
there were a lot of
Porter.
Guys. Yeah, Tashawn Porter.
Yeah, you had guys that are 1,000, 2,000 yard threats all over the state.
Sharmar Brown.
Yeah, again, we're just forgetting guys because there's so many to list. Like I went into it every week looking at the kind of the statistical performance. You got guys all over the place running for 200 yards every game. A lot of those guys are gone now. The kind of the junior, sophomore class weren't necessarily as prolific early on in their careers. To now those guys have a chance to step in and become those guys. But Boyle is the one big name again in the top couple of classes coming back that is going to be must watch. You're going to, again, we'll see kind of what they've got fitting in around them, but he's going to be one of the best players in Class B. And They are returning a couple of key playmakers on defense. Cord Simons, the senior linebacker, 62 tackles last year, 8 for loss. Carter Reisig, senior defensive back, played a little bit of offense too. 50 tackles, 6 for loss, a sack, 3 interceptions, 3 passive defense, 1 forced fumble. So it's kind of all over the place for them. And then linebacker Frankie Trevino, senior as well.
Yeah, good call there with Trevino.
40 tackles, 2 sacks, forced fumble, fumble recovery. So those are kind of going to probably be the leaders on defense, and they got to fill in around them. Quarterback, again, Braden Stoll last year just put up some that combination of Stoll as a kind of a run first, but can pass quarterback to go with Boyle in the backfield. Like that run game was a monster to defend. This year, it's going to be a familiar name to me. Sophomore Nate Kelly stepping in as the starting quarterback for them.
I wondered if listen, the first time he smiled all NEB prep segment, it is to talk about his dual sport fave. The guy who at the end of the game, you said, listen, let's put the ball in Nate's hands. Good things are going to happen. And here we are.
Yep. So Stoll was the only one that threw a pass for them last year, but Kelly got out there, played a little bit for them, got his feet wet at least a little bit. Now he's going to be the guy stepping in there.
And you love his temperament.
And I was texting him. I was like, hey, it's got to be nice having the best running back in the state to hand off to as a first-year starter. It's like, yeah, we got a nice little partnership going on here. So he's excited about this season.
Yeah. Checking in at number 7, a team that has won a state championship in the last 5-6 years. So it's a program that is not unaccustomed to having some success, but right down the road where as my daughter would say, where the hot air balloon is, we go to York.
Yeah.
Checking in at number 7. Good football team. Going to have to bounce back from a year ago.
Yeah. And that's, again, Scott, York, some of these teams that have been powers that kind of fell off a little bit the last few years. Now looking to see can they get back to where they were with some of the senior classes that the others that have risen up have graduated. Now, like talked about in Class A, after 1-2, it kind of opens up. Class B is pretty wide open too. A lot of teams that could earn kind of those 4, 5, 6, 7, kind of rounding out the rest of the rankings there. And
I feel like we kind of said that a lot about Class B the last couple of years in that 3 to 8 range, right? Lot of fluctuation with looking at key matchups and kind of going almost week by week.
Yeah, and so York went 6-4 last year, but they got a lot to return. Last year, kind of the surprise was, I don't necessarily know surprise, but maybe they weren't preseason 2, and they rose up throughout the season, was Omaha Gross with that terrific senior class that we talked about all last year. Do you kind of see any of these top 10 teams like lower down as like, okay, that's a team that's
could come from off the grid a little bit? Maybe York. Right now they start. I think they start with Lexington. Then they've got Hastings. Then they have a big one, that 9-8 week where Westside plays Bellevue. Like that week 3, they've got a big one at home against Bennington, and I think that one will kind of tell me a lot. But that's the one that I kind of have circled for this York bunch.
And name to know for York looks to be Seth Erickson. 10.8 tackles a game last year for the stats that we have. Not complete here on Max Preps, but leading returning rusher and leading returning tackler. So that's going to be the guy it seems like they're building around. At 7 is Norris. Again, one of those teams that a couple years ago put together, had a really nice run with the stretch. Their schedule has been so tough the last few years. They've been hanging around the back end of that top 10. You got some talent, but then you go and play 3 top 10 teams in a row and take some losses there and then fall back out. That's kind of seems like it's been the story for Norris the last few years.
A couple of usual suspects running out the top 10 with Elkhorn and Plattsmouth. Let's start with the Antlers over there at Elkhorn, a program that is used to winning at a high level and actually has done a fairly decent job of recovering after losing those super seniors 2 years ago that was led by Drew Christo. I mean, that was some group that left. You get Coach Wortman's last year. You're going second year with a new coach and a storied program. This may be a little bit of a breakthrough for Elkhorn. Do you think?
Yeah, and again, they went 7-3 last year, and again with tough schedule. That's the thing.
Very
Class
tough schedule.
B, all the top teams played each other for the most part, and that makes it tough to you can be a really good team and not quite have the record that you would want or make it as far.
Do you feel decent 2 years removed from that super senior class? Because I think that last year was tough, right? It was like all the old reliables were in essence kind of gone. You had a chance to get your feet wet under a new staff, and you had some success. 7-3 was nothing to sneeze at last year.
Yep, and they got kind of their leaders, their best players were seniors last year, so they've got a lot to replace. But he's new coach here has gotten a couple years under his belt now, kind of establishing his way. They're still playing. Elkhorn football. He didn't come in and completely change the offensive system. Yeah. So guys that have been in the program, they're not having to completely change the way they play. They're kind of rolling with the old school, run the ball, then catch you downfield with a big shot here and there. And that's, that never fun to play against with the team that is as physical as Elkhorn typically is.
Yeah, checking in at in the 10 spot is Plattsmouth, a couple years removed from the great Manassas.
Yeah.
Coach DeZuris is since probably being courted the last couple of years by everybody to come help them coach out. I saw him at 7-on-7 passing league this summer. He still looks fantastic. His heart is in Plattsmouth. What do you think about a team that the last 4 or 5 years has been one of those tough, gritty, grinded out, old school kind of Class B teams?
Yeah, fell off a little bit last year after, like you said, Manassas. That's
hard to replace.
Yeah,
right?
There aren't many of those guys that are going to come through a program very often. But they do return a quarterback. They return their top rushers. They return their top wideouts. They return basically everybody. So it's just a matter of, all right, how much did kind of take in their lumps last year? How much did they gain from that? And what can they do to kind of take that next step forward here?
Kind of like York, that's a team that I almost said could kind of come from the rear because they do have a lot of experience back. It's just at the end of the day when they play the upper echelon, well, they have enough playmakers that can get them some chunk plays, so they don't always have to grind. It's hard to grind for 10, 11, 12 weeks when some of the teams at the top have some big play horses. But Plattsmouth, in my opinion, is a team to keep an eye on.
Yeah, well, that's Class B, and we'll touch on the other classes throughout the season as we go. Kind of, you can go to NEVpreps.com, see the full coaches poll, see who are kind of the early favorites in all those classes. But excited to get out there and after talking a couple weeks here, actually see these guys go out and play.
we will have games to talk about. You and I will be in split venues, I think. Or are you going?
Haven't fully decided. I think we might end up at the same place, but
I know you don't love doing that, but we'll spread the wealth later on when I'm actually having coaching responsibilities.
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily want to make a trip for a week 0 game just yet. A little bit easier to stay close to home, but we'll see. Talk about it all next week, no matter what.
Yep, one of the best in the business. That is my numero uno. That is Jacob Padilla. I'm ODB. It's Nebraska Preps Postgame. Don't miss us next week when we're actually recapping and not previewing. Should be a little different.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.